I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So welcome to our webinar session today on optimizing sales and go-to-market in a downturn. My name is Dave Garcia. I'm an operating advisor at Norris Venture Partners. I am privileged to work with many of our portfolio companies on sales and go-to-marketing opportunities and challenges, big and small, all the time. I am thrilled to be your moderator today with my new friend, Jocko van der Kooi. Jocko is obviously the founder and leader of Winning by Design, which is a fantastic organization that helps companies accelerate their revenue and go to market in sustainable growth. And today, before I turn over to Jocko to introduce himself, we're gonna have a great discussion across three themes. Jocko will talk about those. I've got a number of questions and he and I will go back and forth, but if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. We will try to answer it as we go. And if we don't get to your question today, we will make sure we follow up with you directly. And with that, Jocko, do you want to introduce your fine self?
Yes, well, nice. Thank you all for being here today. And thank you for making time. You know, like taking an hour is not easy these days. So understood that we are very privileged to have you folks here. You know, like I started at the company in 2012. I'm formerly an engineer, and I was responsible for satellite communications for Philips Electronics, where I worked a lot on how to communicate via two satellites. And I was pretty decent at it. I helped DirecTV and EchoStar, or you know as Dish, launch their satellite broadcast systems in back in the day, and was responsible for standardization around MPEG. That level of science and that scientific approach I bring with me and brought with me into sales, eventually sales engineer. And I started looking at marketing, sales, and customer success processes, understanding what they were missing was a scientific backing. And the moment in time that the industry took on SaaS, I go like, folks, this is the time because this machine works differently. That brings me here today. 2012, I started the company. Today at Winning by Design, we help anywhere from, on any given month, between 30 and 40 active customers. We help some of the world's largest, growing SaaS companies, like we're currently helping companies like a DocuSign and stuff like that. So we have Uber Eats, you name it, like these are like our large customers that we help all across the industries, anywhere from about $2 million all the way up to about $300 to $50 million. And like I said, DocuSign and a few of them are bigger. What we primarily focus on, 100% recurring revenue. All we do is recurring revenue. And with that, David, I kick it back over to you.
Fantastic. So Jocko and I are both fortunate that we get to talk to a lot of companies who are always trying to optimize their growth. And I think there are three themes we are both hearing consistently, and we're going to cover all three today. One is, what are some key challenges? What should the focus be to address those market challenges? And then how can we help, or not how can you help your organization thrive? So, we're going to kick it off with key challenges you're seeing today. Jocko, it's really interesting. One of the ones I get all the time is, how do we know we're in a downturn, right? There are clearly folks who are still performing really well. Others are starting to see some headwinds. Kind of what are you using to help guide clients in terms of what the landscape may look like today and in the coming months?
Yeah, first things first, like when you're in SaaS, and may I see if, are people on the chat, can you give me a +1 if you're in SaaS? I just want to see if most of you are in a SaaS revenue market. So give me a +1 in the chat channel. Thank you very much, Karen. That's where, like anyone else, SaaS. Yes, Matt, there you go. And Shaham, Dave, great to see you there. Giannis, nice to meet you. I have bad vision, so if you see me like squint, then I'm actually looking at the chat channel.
I think it's a safe bet. We've got some folks who operate in a SaaS model on the call.
And so let's say that we are all in SaaS. Okay, let's. If you're in SaaS, here's my message to you: a downturn is not a downturn. The rest of the market experiences a downturn as a downturn. SaaS was born out of downturns. That's where it started to exist. When we look back in the years 2003, when it started to come in, it's the moment in time that Benioff and that market started to go post the 2003 internet bubble, and it was created, it was born from that. In 2008, when the financial market collapsed, it is essentially when the entire SaaS world rose and came straight to the front line. It is when DocuSign, it's when like Marketo, obviously CRM solutions, all of them post 2008, they became extremely successful. And again, in 2020, the more recent one that we had, we see that most SaaS companies actually go forward. They go, and why is that? That is primarily because their cost structure is significantly better structured than a historic, a conventional company. So during a downturn, if you're in a SaaS company, you need to embrace this. You can no longer sit down and go like, well, it's kind of like tough. Should we do hard cuts right now? Of course, it's a good time to do some hair clippings. I get that. That's not the point. But it is the time to prepare for what we are about to expect 6 months from now, because it will turn around, and it is already signs showing that it's turned around. And then when it turns around, you need to be ready for that.
I love that attitude, Jocko, because, I think so many people can become paralyzed by fear. We don't want to spend, we don't want to take risks anymore. So in that mindset that this can actually be an opportunity time for an organization, how should organizations be thinking about taking advantage of this? To your point, what should they be doing?
Yeah, now look, I want to start with the following. Dave, what you point out is how should we take advantage and what should we do?
Yep.
The number one topic I want you to consider is train your own team to be ready for what's coming. Train and coach them, get them ready. In this downturn, or it's hard to call it a downturn, but what we are currently seeing is that the summer has in North America severe impact when something like this happens. And why is that? Suddenly people go like, it's May, I don't have to spend the budget. Why don't I put a pin in it? I'll come back in August, September, and we'll start looking at it. There's no need, there's no rush. Let's take a moment. And so what you in many cases see, VCs and PE firms start signaling to their companies, hey, put a pin in it, right? Like hold the line for a moment and see what's coming. We're now coming out of that time period, and out of the time period, as it starts to build, you got about 30 to 60 days left to train your team on something, to understand what is coming, to pull them in, to have your organization and structural meeting and say, here's what's coming and here's what needs to be done.
So agree with you on training. And here's the add-on I would give, and would love to hear your comment on this. When I hear training in this environment and I talk to sales leaders, it's often a message struggle. Those who have a quantitative ROI message that their organization can articulate to an executive, often a finance one, are in better shape than those that have a softer message. Are you seeing that, and kind of what's your take on it?
Yeah. The problem, David and audience, and if I see Dave Phillips, and if I see Gianni and Matt and Shyam, the problem here that what we're having is that in many cases, our industry has not adjusted yet to the reality that has happened over the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. What that reality is that in B2B, sales professional, marketing professionals, and customer success professionals are no longer the bracket of the people with 20 years of experience in the bracket of 45 to 55 to 60 years. If we look back a decade ago and we look at enterprise sales reps, then we're looking at that 45, like mortgage, children in college, kind of like profile. Now, I used to run teams like that. And when I was, as a director, I would have like 6, 8, 12 of enterprise reps working for me. If I would go to an enterprise rep about a decade ago, and I would tell them, folks, hey, I think you need to sell differently. I have a skill that I want to share with you, best practice. They would kick me out. Like, what are you kidding? And their opinion of me as a trainer, coach, sales leader was, Jocko, you manage CRM and you keep Salesforce and other CRMs off my back, and you keep everybody from headquarters off my back. Let me do my thing, okay? And you don't mix what you're doing with what I'm doing. Please stay away. We are today in a very different world. And that world is that the brackets, just because of the nature of SaaS, the price has dropped. So when we look at the profile of our bulk of the employees, and particularly if the go-to-market employees, they're no longer in that 45 to 55-year-old bracket. They have dropped anywhere from 25 to 35 years old. And as a result, those people actually ask us, show us how to do it. Okay, I need to navigate to a decision maker. Well, how? Like I got the click in the checkbox in the CRM, but how do I do that? And that is a very different mindset. That mindset is a mindset of people want to be coached on how to do something, not managed or by a manager that tells them to do this. And training in that concept follows that same line. Training is a process that often happens during the onboarding. What people really need is in real life, in real time coaching. And that is a shift that most organizations have been incapable of making today.
Well, I think you're spot on, because I think in addition to training against a more quantitative, value-driven message for your company, the concept of ongoing coaching and spending time on it is critical. I think the kind of economic benefits we have enjoyed for the past many, many years have definitely led to some, I would say, less developed sales skills from those of us who may have gone through the Great Recession, where you had to have your org chart mapped down. You had to have all of your messaging down. You had to, manage the process end to end with great coaching against that. So I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah. I want to share this visual with your audience, right? And what I want to do, and as I bring this up on the second 1, 2, 3, boop, there it is. And I'm going to duck out here for a second. So for those of you who want to take a screenshot so you don't have my, okay, well, I'll stay, you can screenshot it right there. So what this shows, Dave, is on the left, I got a seller organization, and on the right, I got a buyer organization. When I see seller, this means all go-to-market functions. So this could be applying to CS rep, marketing rep, SDR, AE, everybody. And what you'll see here historically is that these lines that I'm going to light up for you, these lines down here, historically, what we see is that organizations manage their people, and they manage them on volume metrics. How many deals did you close? How many onboardings did you have? How many leads did you generate? How much renewals did you do? And what they do is they manage people on volume metrics day in, day out. That is referred to as managing. What you'll see the shift is, what they really need is they need to shift on the other side. They need to actually help on no longer on that coaching, or no longer on that training and managing on the volume. What they need help is with that. Tell me how I do things in real life. Show me an example of it. Like, give me a recording that I can listen to. That's the shift. Now, the reason why we did this on the left, and the reason why, where there's an exclamation point, we did that because we want better results. What you're going to see, David, if you do this on the right, what you're going to see, you're going to get better results. It's a natural outcome. If you coach people better, train them, do the job, give them examples, it's a result. And that is what is missing. That is one of the Achilles heels today that we see missing in organizations, and that is for a variety of reasons.
I agree completely. And I think in this era of potentially cutting budgets, if one underinvests in training, they will see this awful cycle of degraded performance. So 100% agree. But you also made a great point on, managing by metrics. And the reality is many CEOs, CFOs, maybe an investor, maybe an operating advisor, we still love metrics and data, right? And I know there are a lot of conversations revenue leaders are having right now where, hey, Jocko, I'm sorry, but we're cutting your headcount for the rest of the year. Hey, Jocko, we're cutting our marketing expense. Hey, Jocko, your plan hasn't changed for the rest of the year and your pipeline's degrading. What should I do in this situation?
Okay, so I'll tackle two things. I'm talking about first I'm going to talk about how to tackle headcount reduction, and second I'm going to talk and tackle about what metrics and what kind of metrics we are. So anytime that we are faced with a headcount reduction, there is a natural time that what has happened over the past years, in good times, you have a tendency to overhire. And that tendency, starts to, result in lack of performance or productivity per person. This is a time to let go of some of the folks, not necessarily because they are bad people or not necessarily because, you no longer want them. The problem is that they are not productive, and as a result, they're costing the rest of the company, but also they should find a better role somewhere else for them. And as we see in SaaS, opportunities galore as well at the same time. And so we need to let go of some folks. Now, where do we need to let go? Historically, what we are looking at is people have a very reactionary mindset. Let go of CS reps, for example. It's more important that we keep the growth going. We can't fund both, so let's cut some of our, shift a disproportionate amount of cuts to the customer success part. Or, let's cut our lead campaigns, right? It's expensive, it's not been generating, let's do that. All these can be good or bad, I do not know. They just need to be calculated. What is the impact of that? And when we start calculating what the impact of that is, we often come to the conclusion that the cuts are reactionary beyond the haircut, that the cuts are often very reactionary to the opinion of other people, but causality wise, when we look at where the growth comes from, the cuts are not being made at the right parts, and the investments are not being made at the right parts of the business.
Well,
in the right parts of the business.
I think it's so interesting because what I often talk about with revenue leaders, and even in my own company, is back to your point on coaching. We often spend more time coaching sub-performers or mediocre performers versus our superstars. And if we had the courage potentially to let go of some of those underperformers and focus our coaching efforts more on high performers, would we improve our sales efficiency? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, in part, like what I'm trying to, and what you're making a very correct statement. Don't focus your time on the bottom performers. Absolutely. The word that triggers me is superstars, and here's why. Essentially, superstars you don't need to spend too much time on. Why? Because superstars are superstars for a reason. And you generally 5 or 10% of your working staff has a tendency to be superstars. I can the whole debate, a whole discussion I can have on why that ends up happening and why often in go-to-market there's a disproportionate amount of superstars. But let's say that we have those superstars. Don't spend your time on teaching them or coaching them. Spend time on learning from them. And then teach the next batch of performers to that level. Use the best practices of your superstars that are in CS marketing and sales roles and lead development roles. Use that to coach the next batch of our, because those people, when you lift them up by 5-10% in performance, that's where you're going to see your gain from. But your superstars, you're going to learn from them. So that's the only the trigger that I had.
So insightful. And I also loved your comment on there's a quick reaction to cut customer success. In my experience, when someone's like, time to cut heads, go to customer success, well, then all of a sudden we create an attrition or retention problem. And one of the worst ways that you find yourselves in a situation in a down economy is when all of a sudden your customers are leaving because you've stopped serving them. So I think that is just so prescient in terms of where to make the appropriate reductions and investments.
Fantastic. Now, Dave, I'm going to do something. You ready for this?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Folks, I'm looking at the chat channel and I'm going to put a little tune. And while I do that, I would love for the folks that are online, the 20 participants that we have, to type in what is your current takeaway or a question or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to play a tune. Here we go. Please type in the chat. What is your key takeaway right now? And I know it takes a few seconds because you're compiling a sentence, so I'll let you folks do that. Fantastic, Dave. That's exactly right. You want to make sure that you determine the impact before you make the cut. And in a second, I'm going to show you an example of that. And as we let other people come in and start commenting on that, remember, I'm here to help you and share some of, like the practice. I personally work on hundreds and hundreds of SaaS companies, so I can, in many cases, give you a practical example of where something worked and don't work. Now, there we go. Find where you are winning and learn how to get out of that to the wider team. Yes, that level of bringing that practice in is so fantastic. And I want you to understand how you do that, okay? I mean, like you may say, it's like, okay, that's a great takeaway. Now, how do I do that? Here's what you can do. When you have one of your superstar performers, one of the reasons why they make a superstar performance is they often want to be elevated to a position. So record something with them, interview them, use your own marketing department, not to learn from a use case from an external customer. Structure a proper story. What made you win? What was the thing you had to overcome? What's the impact that the customer wanted? What's the critical event that they needed this by? Learn from that and bring that knowledge onwards. Thank you, Shiham, for bringing that. And Matt, not to be too reactionary, but evidence-based on the decisions that need to be made. Fantastic. Like, make it causality-based. Show it as evidence. And if you don't have it, make an assumption and compare 3 months later on it. Fantastic, Matt. Question. Train them on what's to come. What is to come? What is the downturn and how long will it last? I'll pick that up in a second. I'm coming. Question, what are the right metrics? Oh my gosh, the last two are lining me up perfectly for the next one. So hold tight, both Al and Rock. We're gonna bring you that. So what I'm gonna show you behind me right now, 3, 2, and 1. I'm gonna show you a growth curve. Now this is called an S-based growth curve. Okay, all you companies, everyone, all of you on the call share one common journey, and that is you're somewhere along this growth curve and you grow. You go from early stage to late stage to grown up to enterprise. Everybody shares this. You're all here somewhere. Now, if you look at millions of dollars, that dot here in the middle, that's approximately where you go IPO, and you move from a scale up to a grown up. If you ask me what metrics are we going to look at, what I'm going to overlay here is the most common mistakes. That big, that's 100 companies, that's 100%. And it half. It's almost half. We're going to lose half of the companies because they don't get the product market fit. We lose half of the companies because they don't have go-to-market fit. And then what you'll see, per of these sessions, what are the metrics? These are some of the metrics. And now what you'll see here, when you look at these metrics, and I know they're small, and like I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so you folks get like that going. Many of you, when you look at the metrics, you'll see these metrics. Deal metrics, number of customers, that's what you in startups face. Less than you're around 1 or 2 million. You're really looking at how many customers do I win? What's my ACV? What is my dollar customer? Then you start to see performance metrics coming into play. What's my pipeline conversion? What are the pipeline being generated? What is the churn that my customer success department is doing? What is the amount of deals or ARR that I'm getting per new rep? That fits into that next stage. And then the third stage starts to occur. And the third stage, you see the growth rate. How long does it take? What is your sales cycle? What is the lead velocity? What is the sales performance? What's your customer lifetime value? These are metrics as you progress. As you're in this stage, you got to worry about the metrics in that stage. And as you're in that stage, you got to worry about the metrics that are in this stage. And as you're in this stage, you got to worry about the metric in that stage. You constantly got to prepare for the next stage of metrics. You cannot stay stuck in all of this is about just how many salespeople are hitting quota. That's not how it's going to get. And that's, Dave, where many times this goes wrong. Because as soon as we turn the curve down here, where that yellow dot is right now, often you need to see growth coming from customer success. And in times of this economic distress, while you're still thinking that you're in that mode down there, you're firing CS people who can help you with the metrics down here. And now you've taken, cut yourself short, and that is going to lead you in the end to a delayed sales cycle. Well, that was a lot of knowledge in there, so I'm just going to pause there, and Dave, and give some room for questions. Go for it. How does this resonate, Dave?
Well, I was going to say this is a great transition into kind of the next section in terms of where should the focus be then. Jocko, you had shared your bow tie concept with me, which I think is really powerful. So maybe if you could walk through that and we could take more questions after you share the concept.
Fantastic. Okay, so let me explain what that concept is so we get a general idea of it. Historically, all of us are using the marketing and sales funnel. And the goal of the marketing and sales funnel is to figure out how many leads are being converted into wins, like closes and so on and so forth. What happens in that is that the recurring revenue part takes place outside of the purview of the marketing and sales funnel. And as a result, when we go into board meetings, we find that most of the conversation in the board meetings is all about how much leads are being generated and what is the deal conversion. That mindset may not be 100% accurate, but when I start telling you that, that we run into companies with a 50-slide deck that talks about the health of the business, 45 slides of that deck go to this part of the business. All about closing deals, sales performance, number of leads, where the leads come from, attribution, dollars per lead, and stuff like that. And then that presentation often takes an hour. And then the last 30 seconds of the meeting, we quickly peruse through, okay, how's churn? Churn is good. Okay, that's what I mean with recurring revenue takes place outside of the purview of the funnel. And that is a challenge. And so what we are presenting down here and what we have done with many of our clients, we've said is you need to take a look at the entire journey. You cannot just look at just the left side. You also need to not only look at it, administer metrics and proper formulas in order to get to the right. And so to the right, you're going to see that it creates a bow tie where the customer expansion takes place, renewals, expansion, onboarding, getting the customer happy, and so on and so forth. Now, what you see, Dave, is that on the right, and I'm going to dive underneath it, right down here, you're seeing that circle of motion. That is compound impact. And that compound impact is where much of the growth of a company comes from once they start to surpass 15, 16, 17 million dollars in revenue. Now, it takes the company about 1 to 2 years to prepare for that. That means that when you are between $5 to $8 million, you need to start preparing for that. You need to start hiring and processes and stuff like that into place. And if you're not, you're going to miss that growth. You're going to see growth continues to come from the left side of the bow tie, and it keeps this disproportionate focus to that. And it then, if you don't prepare for it, it takes you 2 years later on when you're at 30, 40, 50 million dollars. Now that process has set in, and there's so much, people that are focused on that to switch to that side is really, really hard.
So Jaco, I think it's a great insight on that right side. Can you give us some real tactical examples then or takeaways on what people can do to drive that right side of the bow tie?
Yeah. So what we're seeing down here is the following. On the right side of the bow tie, when we look at expansion is generally where growth comes from, not just from the renewal, from expansion. Now, I'm going to give you a real practical tip. The practical tip involves, let's say that you have a customer, and in that customer, there's a person named, a champion named Jennifer, and Jennifer is leaving the company. Under good circumstances, Jennifer is going to go to some other company. When that occurs, most companies do not have a process for when that occurs. They simply keep the account going. When Jennifer leaves, it creates 2 immediate opportunities. Number 1, you need to retrain, recoach, and resell the new person that is replacing Jennifer, because if you don't do that, your churn rate is going to go up significantly, and therefore with it your growth. You just lost your champion in there. Number 2, wherever Jennifer goes, you need to let your sales team know immediately, because Jennifer creates a new opportunity wherever she goes. She was a champion for you. And so you need to make sure that your sales team is aware of that and calls up on that person. Or you may have a customer success manager say like, hey, where are you going? Excited, and so on and so forth. That is an immediate revenue opportunity for two occasions. That's number 1. You with me?
Totally with you.
Okay, number 2 opportunity, really present right now. Now, over the past 6 months, you may have closed 1-year contracts with your customers. And some of these customers are monthly contracts, and some of these customers said when you offered them an annual contract, or when you offered them a 2 or 3 year annual contract, and they chose like, no, I'm not ready for that yet. In your mind, that was done at that point in time, and you moved forward. But now, many of those customers that you won 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, they have grown attached to your service. Go to those customers right now and said like, hey, 5, 6 months ago, you said it needed to be proven. You now have proven. May I ask, are you ready today to renew on a 2-year contract or on a 3-year contract? Or if you're on a monthly contract, are you ready to move to an annual contract? Why? Because they're right in the middle of it. They have experienced it, and they can benefit from a cost reduction on their side because they're being tasked, hey, budgets in 2023 get cut. And so now what was a threat to you suddenly has become an opportunity because your customers are also cutting budgets. So go out and close multi-year contract deals, lock that up. And some organizations, particularly anything with security, education, GovTech, anyone that has a team that is not day in, day out buying SaaS products, they prefer a 2 to 3 year contract with a discount right now. And sometimes they even say, as we get into the window, please make me spend my budget right now, otherwise I'll lose it.
Such a great insight. So the fact to run a process like that, a multi-year renewal, that takes some selling effort, right? I think some insight from you on, well, should sellers wear a hunter and farmer hat? At what size is the right stage to bifurcate that role? How do I contact people? How do I make the case for more farmers in this environment? And any insights there? Absolutely.
This is a very, very, there's 2 debates that we always have assignment is where do the SDRs report into? That's one that always comes up.
Always.
And where does CS report into? The point down here is that it depends on where you are in revenue, but I'll give you an answer that you can do a little bit with. Let's say that you're selling seats. And let's say you're selling a platform, whatever it is, an ERP, a CRM, a marketing automation system, and your customer has 12 seats, something like that. Upgrading them to 13 seats, there's no need for anybody to be involved. Your CS rep can do that. There should be power to do that. That's a renewal with an additional seat amount. Now, let's say that your coach in the group says, hey, we got another group that needs to be sold. Now, when that other group needs to be sold, what you often think this is easy. Selling to another group inside a company ain't easy because they're already using something, and often that is the competitor product. And your champion is trying to say, let them buy my product so that I get more resources in the company because now we're all on the same system. So in that case, you'll send that back to sales. Why? Pitching, we need some pitching, we need some, customer diagnosing, we need, in a wrong order, by the way, we need some diagnosing, we need careful listening to the customer, we need to make sure that we capture their needs, navigate the organization, all going back to the left side of the bow tie down here. All that, upsell, cross-sell, these are things.
But the challenge is a dollar is not always a dollar, right? And so if you are constrained in terms of the size of your sales organization, I'm with you. Upselling and cross-selling, I think, is always an easier path to revenue until you have a board or investor who's looking for new logo growth, right? And so how do you balance those two?
Yeah, you balance that through the comp plan, and it can become very painful. And this is the reason why I'm hesitant. We know that at $30-40 million on the right side of the bow tie, whoever is selling and upselling is a different role than who's landing new accounts.
Yep.
And so what it is this moment in between, and what do we do with it? Now, in the beginning, you're going to use those sellers, like to do that upsell and cross-sell.
Yep.
But if you don't carefully manage their comp plan in a rightful way, then this happens. Let's say that down here, they get 10% on a deal, and the deal that the closes on average is $10,000. And I'm using round numbers. That means they make $1,000 in variable on the right. Now, let's say on the right, but in order to do that, by the way, they have a win rate of somewhere about 25%. That means they got to call on 4 accounts, do 4 times the work to get $1,000. Now on the right, their win rate is significantly higher. They literally are cherry picking. They can look at the metrics, they see who their right one, and they're already customers. They already have intro. A lot of the hard work is done. Still more hard work to be done, but they're closing on the right. Now let's say that they take the comp plan with that, and they're making 10% on whatever closes on the right. You will quickly see that they go to the right and go like, oh my gosh, I got a lot more money sitting on the right. I'm going to harvest that. And now suddenly, and as we have seen, 80% of the time they spend on the right side, and 10 to 20% they spend on the left side. And now your lead flow starts to get blocked, and you don't have any new growth. Very dangerous. In the next 6 months, we need to put a lot of practice into, or protections into place for companies to not fall into that trap. That the sellers stop calling here. The way you do that is you do not give them the same dollar per dollar sold, the same dollar comp on the dollar sold, what is in the pink versus what is in the blue. On the right, what you generally see is you sell at 1/4. So $10,000 comp here, and what you have to sell $10,000 down here, you need to sell $40,000 on the other side.
Yep. I think it makes total sense. Where I sometimes see challenges, Jocko, is, to your point, the selling motion is different. And so different people have different roles. Is there an ideal size revenue-wise that you typically see where it's like, no, you're only going to do upsell, cross-sell, and no, you're only going to hunt?
Yes, between right around $18 million in ARR, on average, you see the shift occur. You got about till about 35 to make that shift. If you do not, at 70, somewhere between 70 and $75 million, the growth from that pink part needs to be so substantial that you're at that point in time, your investors will hammer you on it. If you have not made that switch, so you need to make that switch right around 35. If you do triple, double, or somewhere along those lines, you count that back, and it gives you 1 to 2 years to get all this figured out. If I say at $70 million, you need to have it, and let's say that you got to $70 million by 2 times triple or something like that, and you need 3 times years of double. 70 divided by 2 is 35, divided by 2 is 17.5, and that means that by 17.5, 2 years in advance, you need to start putting this infrastructure in place.
I think that's great advice, Jocko. And the other area I typically see, would love, about your comments on the expansion side is early stage companies don't often have that white space matrix done of what is the true potential. They know it's there, but in terms of the ability to make that business case, so when they get to 15, 18 million, they start to prepare. Any advice for people there?
Can you rephrase that question?
In terms of, I'm with you, by the way, on the 18 million-ish sounds right, but you have to start preparing before then. In terms of making the business case beyond we all know this is the right thing to do, how can sales leaders make that business case to make that investment ahead of the curve?
Calculated. I'm going to show you that. Would you mind if I go in calculation? I'm going to show you some math, but I'm going to, this is like this is like where the engineer in me comes to the front. Okay.
I would love to see it, because oftentimes I see with sub $10 million companies, it's like, what's the upsell opportunity? It's a lot. Well, by how much? By what account? By what solutions? And I think some understanding of how to develop that rigor would be helpful.
Okay. Don't get scared, people. I need to, what am I going to put on there? I need to what am I about to do is.
I was going to say, if there's music, I'm going to get a little scared, Jocko. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, so here I'm going on the growth formula. What I'm going to do, growth formula is not, you will recognize it in a second. You're going to, okay, that's what it is. Okay, so just step with me. I'm going to look at the left side of the bow tie down here. And in the left side of the bow tie, I'm going to use MQLs here. They're going to go through a conversion rate, like what the lead gen team, lead development team. I'm going to get SQLs. They're going to go through some win rate, or to some handoff, which is CR3. I mean, the SDR hands it off to the AE hands it off to a colleague, the upsell, cross-sell, whatever that is. Then I'm going to get the amount of opportunities. Then I'm going to get the win rate. Then that tells me how many deals I'm going to win and the discount. Now let's overlay that picture here. I'm having 114 leads coming in, MQLs. I convert at 3.2%. These are real data, realistic data. I've obscured them a little bit, but they are but they're pretty close. I got 3.7 SQLs. The SDR AE, or the customer success to AE handoff, is about 85%, means something gets lost, was misunderstood by whoever did that. 3.1 are left. I convert at a 32% win rate. At the dollar price, this product was priced at $24,000. I get one win, 23% discount. I get $18,000, right? I now know it takes me 114 wins, MQLs, to generate $18,000, $18,408. I now go to the right side of the bow tie. Let me do that first. I go to the right side of the bow tie. And what do I see here on the right side of the bow tie? I see that my onboarding churn included, and that first year retention is 98%. I see the expansion. In year one, I'm not expanding. So I'm ending out at $18,000. Yep. As I renew, the expansion that came at the end of year two goes into year two. And as you see, the client in this case bought 128% extra seats, extra functionality, consumption, and whatnot. And what you'll see is that we lost 5% on churn on that year one to year two conversion. I do the same thing for year 3, 4, 5. I add it all up. What do I come to the conclusion? This one customer that I wanted $18,408 has a customer lifetime value over a 5-year horizon of $111,000. Folks, that is a growth formula. This is how we calculate. Now, what I can now do is I can now calculate, if I increase the win rate, how many more wins am I getting? How much more revenue am I getting? How much more lifetime value am I getting? Or if I perform individual metrics, how much more conversion rate? How much can I get more out of a customer? What's the impact of the discount? Is there a relationship between discount and so on? I can prove all this, and mathematically, I can show you why one is better than the other. I can show you what the cost here is, your CS, and tells you if you're going to remove an account manager, your upsell is going to go down and your churn is going to go up. So you're saving $120,000 on a CS rep. I get that. But across the 500 clients that you have, it's going to cost you $1 million due to increase in churn and reduction, right? That's how I can prove that. That is called the growth formula. Now, before I hand it back, I want you to understand, this is a static growth formula. They are not static in real time. And so what I'm going to show you here is the metrics, for example, of the win rate. And again, this was a real customer, a renowned customer. I had a a plus $10 billion IPO. And what you see down here, is that the enterprise win rate ran down. Remember I said on top, at $80,000, we had 32.3% win rate? That win rate is not static. We notice in here that that win rate is going down. We notice that the average win rate across all three segments is going down. That tells us that as we predict the future around that 32.3%, that we shouldn't do that, and that we rather should start thinking about that future as being closer to 29, 30%. That changes the growth formula. Now I know if I implement that into the number, what do I need to prepare for? How many leads do I need? And so on and so forth. That is how you make a management team know. Because if you're not, then what you're dealing with is their opinion, and they were just on a board of another company and they say they did this, and they go, yeah, well, work for them. Yeah, but they may have different metrics. They may have different win rates. They may have different leads to win conversion cycles. Like, a lot is different, but the moment in time you calculate out, this formula is always the same.
Well, and I think that's one of the big takeaways for me, is having a fact-based discussion based on a model with relatively standardized metrics is so important. So spot on, super helpful. Bringing it down to the individual level, though, the individual seller, right? Because as revenue leaders, we've got to manage, our CEO, our CFO, our board, our customers. But at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in servant leadership, and we have to manage and empower and coach the sellers, right? I know a lot of sales leaders I've talked to are having some really tough discussions right now with quota. Like, it's clear our historical quota achievement performance is going to be down this year for a variety of reasons. Are you hearing that? If you are, how are you seeing sales leaders adjust to keep retention or other ideas?
Yeah. So quota performance, the performance against people and why we put them on quota is often, I'm going to use it on a black background. So, like, if quota and if variable comp plans were that influential in making people and driving people's behavior, we would see a lot higher performance response to quota-driven performances. Now, this comes from a misconception, and then I'll give you the solution. But you first have to understand the misconception of quotas and variable comp plans. The misconception is that it drives behavior. As numerous researchers with practical results, people like Daniel Pink have shown, that when the reward that you get versus the right behavior that you did are extended over a long period of time, so you cannot correlate, you do not know why am I being compensated, then compensation doesn't make sense. So if you have a 6-month sales cycle, but really the first discovery call is the determinant factor on having winning a customer, you're not going to correlate back the fact that you just made commission 6 months later on the call that you did 6 months earlier. It's not going to work. So comp plan works really well if I want to get something done by this month. I want to drive up sales this month. I want to do something right now, and I need an injection. The problem with that, it only works once, because if you remove that variable comp at that point in time, then suddenly the behavior starts focusing on other things. It's going on vacation this month. I got other things to do. It's busier. With that in insight, which what we're knowing, we can now drive people on what they are compensated on. Sales professionals, although they will always say that they're compensated, that they are motivated by money, and they are, but it's not the only thing. The primary reason why a salesperson is motivated is because they see themselves as recognized. And it's the Top Gun pilot on the deck, like, I'm going to save the world, right? And this behavior is admirable, and we need it in this time frame. Why? Companies are going to go through a challenging time. So now we need our, like that, hey, I'm going to go and run up the hill and I'm going to make it happen. We need that attitude. Not necessarily do we have the comp dollars for that. What you need to do as a person that's listening to me today, you need to have fantastic conversation with your top front sales leaders. Conversation. You need to listen to them. You need to engage in them. You need to ask them where it is at. You need to let them drive that direction, because if you are in a downturn, they know where to find the money. Then the second thing that you need to do is you need to make sure, absolutely sure, that they get recognized for that. This is fantastic like behavior. You need to put it on display. In their world, this is as important as compensation. that recognition in front of the company, that recognition that they have done something special. If you do not do that, and you say it's the engineering, it's the product, it's the customer success rep, then you're going to forgo, then they're going to fall back on comp, they're going to see that the comp is low, and they're going to get demotivated, and they're going to start working less.
Or go someplace else. And I think
or go place else, yes.
That's the real risk, right? Which is why I think recognition is important, right? At least you can always drive that. The risk I often see is you have high performer sellers who've earned or over-earned, and now that's going away, maybe have some personal challenges. And so now it's a time to maybe look for a different industry, different company to start over and rebuild. And I think that's the risk to watch out.
Oh, it's a fantastic point, Dave. It's a fantastic point, Dave. Let me tell you why that is a threat and an opportunity, and how you create an opportunity out of that. When you are signing on, and when you're an enterprise rep, you just don't generate deals out of the blue, right? You just don't show up and say, okay, let me closing deals. It takes a while. And often it takes, in an SMB market, it takes 3 months. In the enterprise sale, it can take as many as 9 months to a year. And so what happens is your rep that you're hiring is asking for a non-recoverable draw for the first 3 months. If I am currently don't make money at my current company, and I'm jumping to a new company in this economy, and let's say I'm starting in Q4, January Q4, I have negotiated myself a commitment of Q4. So I, as a seller, won't take the hit right now this year. And I trust that the economy being turned around. Q2, I may only get 50% committed and 50% held against quota performance. And so therefore, this is an ideal time for me to shift away from your company, or hire top performers from your competitors, because you have the same control of offering that to them. I see that Matt is asking
a great question. Matt asked a great question here.
Where do we stand on scrapping comp plans for higher basic salaries instead, and drive competitiveness through recognition and gamification? Matt, it's a religious decision from my point of view. Numerous research have shown all across the world that if you move to a comp, what you're suggesting, that it has good impact on sales. A company called Culture Amp has moved their entire sales force to that, and that's what they measure. They are measuring it. Would I do that at this point in time? I would not suggest it. Why? Because I don't think it has enough positive or enough negative impact on it. I would say at this point in time, it's too much change in an organization. And if you're a VP of sales and you would move for that, it would be one of those, like, we'll applaud you if you win, but you're going to get fired if this ain't going to turn into anything within the next 6 months. And that risk is, for most, is a little too high. I'm with you. I want it, but it's not happening.
Jocko, to push you there, and idea, kind of leveraging Matt's idea, but also what you just said, if I can go down the street and get guaranteed variable comp for a quarter or two, should sales leaders consider some sort of bonus period if they see a degradation in the business that's not a seller's fault and they're a high performer and want to retain them?
Oh, you made a point that remind, and you may have to. I mean, I'm at this point in time. I'm okay. There was an important thing that you just pinged me, David, that I know that it is important for the audience to hear. If you give your sellers any form of non-recoverable draw, in other words, you pay them outright for it. Make sure you get something back for it. I'm not saying that they should have quota allocation associated with it. Make sure that in the first month, they get to speak or analyze 3 of their peers' customer calls and give a review. 100%. Make sure that in the second month, they can give a corporate pitch. And I don't care if it's like a really hard pitch. I just want to see the motion in action. Run it. Make sure that in month 2, you're doing a mock-up sales call with them and take them through with comments. And you do it again in the end of the month 2, and you do it again in month 3. Get the behavior trained, okay? Then as quarter 2 comes around, make sure that you copy pipeline behavior creation. Make sure that they have that under their belt. But you want to make sure that when you pay them hard cash as non-recoverable, that they step through a proper onboarding program that has hurdles to clear. And not just, hey, good luck, I'll see you 3 months from now and see what you have put on the board.
But retention bonuses or stay bonuses for high performers, thumbs up or thumbs down?
I say that again, retention bonus or stay bonuses, thumbs up for core, this, but only reserved for core employees and only against not just a date, like what you're going to do when you invest a stay bonus into people, right?
Yep.
There's two kinds. Ones that you don't want to leave or even consider leaving, and those who have brought up the conversation with you that they are leaving and you need to hold them. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something very provocative.
Yep.
Those who you pay because they can't leave for you pay them whatever 10,000, 50,000 for the next 6 months, immediately start hiring their replacement.
Yes.
Do not doubt,
Agreed.
do not think, we're going to keep them.
Agreed.
Don't hire a replacement right away. That retention bonus is purely for you to get your B plan operational. Those who you're proactively reach out to and say like, folks, you are so key to this company, right?
Yep.
We want to put in time this group of people we're going to put in place, these 10 people that you do not even consider leaving. All that is take their worry away from them. Don't worry, we got you covered. There's a lot that you can do without a bonus. There's a lot that you can do with talking a lot to them, including them in the strategy, giving them access to the real data that often has a person stay with that.
Great. Two questions that have come in that I just want to answer, and then we'll kind of see if anyone else has anything to wrap up. One is, hey, early stage sales company, would it be best to start out with no comp plans if we're just getting off the ground? And then I'll ask the media one in a second.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. With an early stage company, you're not hiring sales performers against quota. You're hiring business development people who care about the business. Your first two key go-to-market reps are often folks like that. They care so much about the business and the customers. Like now, their salary should be high, and you may give them a variable comp such as 10% of sales just to make them feel like they're in a sales role, but you're not hiring on that behavior. You're hiring on a behavior that they know two things really well. One, they really are intimately involved with the problem that you're solving. They see it, they've been part of it. For example, teachers who've seen in the past how classrooms are not engaged, they're excellent people in that. They're, like when you're selling an educational solution, they understand what's going wrong in the classroom, right? Very passionate. Yeah. And number two, they understand the solution very well. That means that as a seller, and if I'm the founder, I don't just want to train that person. I want to have my 20 years of experience that is in my brain as a founder. I want to transpose that to that person. I want to show them how we're going to solve that. I want to make them actively part of that conversation.
Outstanding. Jocko, we're coming up on closing time. Before I wrap up, last message or wise words for the audience.
Yes, for me, and you already pointed out earlier, I think that we are in a stage that we are making a shift, and that we have the data available and that we have the science available to make decisions based on causality and not correlation. And we live currently in a time that if today a speaker stands on stage and says something, I did this and how great is it? Like that is like on the sidewalk operations from like 200 years ago before there were any hospitals. That's what's happening right now. People are just yelling across the street, hey, I tried this, you should try that. And then, like, no, show me the data. Show me the mathematical calculation, right? Like, and if it applies, I'll take it on, no problem. But if it doesn't, and that's what you'll see today, as I showed you, 1 out of 50 companies makes it to IPO. The remaining 49 patients never get out of the hospital. Okay? Why is that? Because they're looking at, hey, shark attacks are up and ice cream sales are up. It must be there must be a relationship. No, calculate it out. Create a growth formula for your business.
Jocko, so many wonderful insights today. I learned so much. We're so grateful. For everyone who listened in today, thank you so much. We'll be following up with a recording of today's session, a blog post. I think the Winning by Design folks are going to share some of the awesome frameworks Jocko shared today. And everyone, good luck in the second half of the year. And Jocko, bring it home with some sweet music, brother.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, David, and the team for supporting us. See you all out there. Look me up on LinkedIn.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Oh, no.